I'm talking about the hookup tonight, which I think everybody's on board with me. Do I need to back up and explain that, or are we all together so far? Last week, some people were looking at me funny. Are we good with the hookup? Okay. How many understand what I'm talking about when I say the hookup? Let me see your hands. Okay, good. All right. Just want to make sure we're all together. God gives each one of us, and tonight, here's the simple thing about tonight, okay? Tonight, we're not out to change the culture. We're not out to have a morality debate. We're not going to start the new moral majority here tonight. We're not out to really go out to the clubs of Atlanta and tell people you need to wear more clothes and you really shouldn't dance like that and you shouldn't consume that many alcoholic beverages when you're among people of the opposite sex at 2 o'clock in the morning because bad things typically happen. That's not our mission tonight. Our mission isn't to go after television and talk about how bad the moral, decline of society has infiltrated the arts and entertainment and every other thing that slams up against our lives every day. That's not really the message tonight. So we're not trying to marshal a big moral position here. We're really asking a very personal question tonight. The end of tonight isn't that we're going to all go and march on the Capitol. I'm not playing that down, by the way. I think we're going to be, hopefully, agents of change in culture for all kinds of good and God-sized things. But that's not really the mission tonight. The mission tonight's not to make you feel bad. Some of you came through the door in sexual relationships. My goal tonight's not to make you feel bad about that. It's not to make you, feel more condemnation than you might already feel, or more guilt or weirdness than you're feeling possibly already. Or if you're not feeling any or try to act like you're not feeling any, it's not to try to make you feel some. The goal tonight is to ask you a question, to ask me a question, and for you to walk out the door and to come to a conclusion about your life. Not your friend's life, not your neighbor's life, not your roommate's life, not the people you share a dorm with's life, but your life. Because here's the deal. God has given to you the gift of sexual innocence. Now, I understand we may be too late, okay? I get that part. So, what do you do? I mean, a lot of people don't know what to do here because they start going, okay, let's talk about virtual virginity, okay? And, everything with God changes and you can go back and everything's great and pretend like nothing ever happened. That's not true. You can't do that. And so we're in a room full of people who possibly, I'm not saying anything out loud, I'm just saying who possibly have already gone some places sexually by now. And so it's hard to go back to the beginning. Maybe we should have all done this when we were one, and started together on the journey down the road. But wherever you are tonight, you have to understand this. God has given every one of us something called sexual innocence, purity. And here's the short version of tonight if you want to cut out early. If you got to hook up with somebody later and they're texting you during the talk and you can't stay for the whole thing, here's the short part of the message tonight. The sexual innocence that God has given you is intended to find its counterpart when you meet someone for life. Now, I don't think that's a big revelation. I don't see anybody writing that down. I don't see anybody, nudging their neighbor and going, "Can you believe he just said that? Unbelievable." I mean, everyone knows that. You can go in any club in this city on any weekend and you can find people who are living out all kinds of lifestyles, but I think everybody's figured it out deep down inside that there's something called a significant relationship. A partner that we dream about, that we pray for, that we hope for, that we, in many cases, wait for. That we would have the opportunity to have something with them that we've really never had before, much less with somebody else. And discover the joy, the wow, the oh my gosh factor, the oops factor, the woo factor, all the factors that come with meeting somebody and going, "I don't know, do you know? I kind of think I know. Well, let's go for it." You're saying, "Well, that doesn't make sense. I think the world may have a better idea. I think you should, test drive the car before you buy it. Don't we need to know if we're sexually compatible?" Well, good news, you're sexually compatible. If you've been wondering about that, I would love to clear that up tonight. You're sexually compatible. As long as you meet a him and you're a her, it's going to work good. You can try to make it work otherwise, and people do, but it's not designed to go that way. And when that moment comes, you want to be carrying with you the thing that God has entrusted to you. It's called sexual innocence. I think when people ask the question, well, I need to know if we're sexually compatible, here's what I think they're asking. I may not be right on this, but here's what I think they're asking. I think they're asking, I've watched a lot of stuff, seen a lot of stuff, put a lot of images in my mind, have a lot of wild concepts about what sex could be, should be, might be, ought to be, was with those people. And I need to know if she's going to be or he's going to be up for some of the things I've been thinking about, experiencing, participating in, watching. I don't think people who are carrying with them sexual innocence are worried about compatibility. They're worried about what in the world's going to happen on the honeymoon. And you want to be worried about that. I don't mean not worried, but you want to carry that with you. You want to be going, out of that reception. Oh my goodness, I'm not sure. Something's going to happen, and I tell people all the time, you need to punt that first night myth. You need to get that out of your head. People who are carrying sexual innocence, I'm sure it happens all the time, but not normally. When you're dog tired, we got newlyweds on the front row, so I'm feeling a little tension up here, okay? And I'm not aiming this toward anybody. I go over here. You're worn out. You've shaken all the hands you want to shake. Your face feels like it's going to fall off from smiling. You've been standing on your feet all day. You're exhausted from the stress you've never had before of having all the family in one room, and the whole wedding thing went down. And then it's like 11 o'clock, and you're getting somewhere to the hojo, and it's like, all right, honey, here we are. Everything in life has been building up to this moment of sexual bliss. Man, you need to just punt that idea right there. Here's my suggestion. You need to just plan on going on the honeymoon and let what happens happen. If it happens on the first night, congratulations. We'll give you a plaque and an award of some kind. If it happens on the second night, you don't get demerits for that. Third night's fine. Second afternoon's okay. After breakfast on the fourth day works. Let it happen when it happens. You see, we put all this pressure. And I think you want that. I think you want a little of that. I think you want to be carrying sexual innocence in that moment. And so here's my challenge tonight. I'm not trying to change culture tonight. I'm not trying to undo the single scene in Atlanta. I'm just asking you a question. What are you going to do with the sexual innocence God has entrusted to you? What's your choice going to be? What's your path going to look like? Because honestly, that's really all you have control over tonight. And you have control over that. Your boyfriend doesn't have control over it. Some girl doesn't have control over it. The culture doesn't have, society, your friends, what everybody else is doing has no say in what you choose to do with what God has entrusted to you. And my prayer is at the end of this night, we will join our hearts together in some way with His and say, I know what I want to do with my sexual innocence. Maybe you're going, well, I should have gone ahead and left right now. I don't have a lot of sexual innocence. I've been with a lot of people. I've had a lot of partners. I've been kind of out in left field for a while. I didn't even know God existed until 2 years ago in my life. It's been a long road to here. Well, God can't undo the past, and that's not what God is about, but God can give you an amazing future. And the past won't short-circuit you from carrying well what God has entrusted to you now for the future that He wants you to have. Once you start down the road of sexuality, whether that's undressing your girlfriend on a high school date, or meeting somebody at a bar or club and after 2 or 3 drinks, hooking up for the night and the next day not really even knowing their full name. Or whether that's just you in your own little private world starting to drift away towards fantasy world and temptation world and online world and all that craziness. It doesn't matter. Or maybe you've been dating somebody for 1.5 years and you really genuinely love each other, but hello, stuff's going on and you find yourself at her apartment or his apartment at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday, Saturday morning early, and guess what? Stuff's happening. No kidding. That's the way it works. I don't know what category or where it happens or how old you are or what your journey is. What I'm telling you tonight is once the journey begins, it begins. It's not beginning too well there. And once you start down that road, there are repercussions. And what God entrusted to you And what he placed in your hands will always be altered by the decisions that you make. The scripture says in reference to sexuality, you can't take fire into your bosom or into your chest and not get burned by it. You can't just mess around and hope that life works out. You can't just have a whacked out view of sexuality and expect to meet people and have decent dates and relationships that last more than 2 months. And you can't expect to walk down the aisle someday like I think everybody in the building probably wants to do and start down a journey with somebody that fulfills what you've always thought about since you were a little kid. If you've been taking fire into your chest the whole way on the journey thinking, well, it's not going to burn me, or it's not going to come back to haunt me, or it's not going to really impact what happens down there. This is tonight. That's about the future. It's not going to happen for a long time. What God is saying, I've given you innocence, and once you start down that road, certain things will never be the same again. So I don't know. I'm thinking about who's here tonight. I'm thinking there are a couple of groups of people here tonight. I'm thinking there's a massive group of people here tonight who are not sexually active. You're not even dating active. You don't even have somebody you'd like to go out with. So you're kind of in this boat of, thank you very much, but I don't go on dates, and so it's going to be hard for me to end up hooking up with somebody because I don't have somebodies in my life. Thank you very much. But that's not the only issue. I'm not saying you're just not in the dating world. There are a lot of you who are saying, I want to go for God. I want to go after God with my life, and I think sexuality is a part of that, and I want that part of my life to honor God, and I'm trying to go for God's heart with my life. I think that's a lot of people in this building tonight, and I just want to come alongside of you and say, I'm not sitting up here tonight assuming everybody out here is in some kind of sexual relationship. I know it's not true, and I know a lot of you guys are trusting this to God every day of your life. I think there's a second group of people here tonight, and you're looking in from the outside. You may not know Christ. You don't have a relationship with God yet. You're checking this whole thing out, church, God, Christianity, whatever you want to call it. You're looking in from the outside, and you're trying to figure out, what do these people think, and how does it relate to my life? And maybe I don't know where you are sexually. Maybe you're just the same place some of these God followers are, and you're like, I don't want to just sleep with anybody. I think sex is a very sacred thing. I'm not out there sleeping around with anybody who'll go home with me. I'm trying to hang on to that too, and I don't even know God yet. I think there's a third group of people here, though, and you are sexually active, and I just want to say that out loud. I think some of you are 722 goers. It's not like you just dropped in and all of a sudden cars were turning right, so you turned right and found a parking space and walked in. You came in, found your seat, got a Bible, love it, love the music, bought a CD or two. You're here, you're loving it, but you're going to go home with somebody tonight or this weekend or whatever. You're sexually active right now. Some of you don't know God, sexually active. Some of you know God, very much determined to be right now. I know, but I'm going to just go for it right now. But the opportunity arises, I'm taking it. And I'm going to choose that path in my life. And there's a fourth group of people here tonight, and you're going under. There's some of you going for God. There's some of you just looking in, checking it out. There's some of you who know you're sexually active, and that's the decision you've made. And some of you maybe didn't feel any conscience about it and just went for it. Some of you just looked straight in the face of your conscience and went for it anyway. But there's a fourth group of people in the building tonight, and you're going under. And I just always want to acknowledge you, that we know you're here. I mean, we don't know who you are, but we know you're here. Some of you love God with everything in you. You want to be godly with everything in you, but you are a breath away from sinking under the surface of sexual immorality and going down to the bottom for life. And I just want to encourage you tonight to know that there is power in Christ and the ability in Christ tonight to start down the road towards a new future. And God can do miraculously more than you have ever dreamed or thought. And even in this area, He can as well. I want us to look at two primary things tonight. I want to just talk briefly about what the culture has to say about hooking up. And then I'd like for us to think for a few minutes about what God has to say about hooking up. And then I'd like for you to choose where you want to land with your life and how you want to walk out your life, because that's the bottom line tonight, is what you choose to do with your sexuality that God has entrusted to you. So what's the world saying? You tell me. What's the world saying about hooking up? You run into somebody over Starbucks. What'd you do this weekend? Well, I met this guy, and whatever, one thing led to the other, and went back to his place, and whatever. And what do they say at that point? Anybody want to help me out? Way to go. Yeah, they do. Congratulations. Fantastic. People say things like this. They say, well, I know, but it was just sex. Have you ever heard that? It's kind of an interesting phrase, isn't it? No, I don't really know him that well, and we're not going out. In fact, I don't even know his last name, and I'm not sure I could find his house again for $5,000 right now if you asked me to. But it was just sex. In other words, let's put parentheses around it, brackets, if you will. Let's suspend it from time and space and say that for those moments or hours together, it was just sex. Nothing else was happening there. I didn't know him, he didn't know me, there was no commitment involved, there was no relationship involved, there was no this, that, or the other. It was just sex. And when you get to just sex, which a lot of people are saying about hooking up, you want to make sure that you're having what kind of sex? If you're going to have just sex, you want to have safe sex. So you got to have safe sex if it's just sex. So then somebody might ask you, well, is everything okay? Did you use protection when you just had sex with the guy you met that you don't know his last name? And the culture's okay with it. Hooking up's okay as long as you're responsible, right? You got to have a condom, guys, on you at all times in case you hook up. You want to be responsible. You want to lead the way in that. You want to be somebody who recognizes that things could happen and consequences could happen. People say about hooking up that it's about compatibility. We talked about it's about testing out compatibility on all levels. I know intellectually we fit, and I know that I like her sense of humor, but I don't know really sexually if we're a good match for one another or not. So we got to check out compatibility, man. That's what this is about. It's not about me being, off the deep end spiritually or morally. It's just about compatibility, Louie. I mean, it's an important part of life. You got to admit that. You said yourself earlier, most guys think more about sex every day than anything else, so you got to make sure you get the compatibility thing going on right. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I see that, I guess. I say again, just in case you missed it before, you are compatible. Unless you've got some wacko, wild sexual ideas that you've been carrying around for a while. Unless that's what you're bringing into the relationship, that's the baggage you're bringing with you. And you need to say that. You need to tell that person that. I'm being honest with you. If you're coming into that relationship and you've got some kind of sexual undertow going on in your life, I mean, can we just be honest for a minute? I mean, if you've already fantasized about having sex with this person a dozen times before you ever actually got to the Starbucks, you need to let them know that. You need to come in and say, hey, by the way, I'm Bob, and I got baggage, and in this baggage is a lot of sexual immorality. I look at a lot of pornography online. I've watched a lot of sexual stuff in my lifetime. I mean, I snuck into Playboy as a kid. I looked at this. Now I've got an online thing. I've got a lot of stuff going on up here. I've seen people do stuff that might blow your mind, and in the weirdest shapes, positions, sizes, and colors. I've seen a lot of stuff, and I'm carrying it all into this relationship tonight. Hi, how are you? What's been going on in your life this week? Are we being too straightforward? Just tell me if I crossed lines or not, Joel. That just did one. And you may want to say to them, and it's a good chance, I'm going to go home and fantasize about you when this is over. You're like, what planet are you living on? Any gentlemen here? With me? Anybody? No one? Not one person. Amazing. You see, I think we have to understand that when we are asking questions about compatibility, we're playing a card that's saying to the other person, I think I've got probably too much information going on. We're not saying to this other person, you know what, I just care about you, and my main objective in life is to bring to you my sexual innocence and to offer that to you along with everything else about me in such a way to bring joy and happiness to you all the days of your life. Not to roll into that thing going, well, I wonder if it'll be like this, or if she'll do that, or I've seen some strange stuff. I got some weird images and pictures I've been carrying around in my life. But to go into that relationship going, you know what, when the time is right, under God's leadership, if we do end up in a significant lifetime relationship, a marriage, a joining together of two lives for one purpose, then I want to be able to say to you, you know what, I have sexual organs and a sexual makeup and sexual desires and drives, and I'd like to just offer them to you for your happiness, your joy, in life. See, it's a different mentality than saying, well, we need to figure out whether we fit together or not. I think what the culture is saying is, well, if you hook up, especially if you love them, doesn't that ultimately, Louie, bring you closer together? I mean, we want to, as close as we can be. We want to be as close as we can, and we love each other. We're committed to each other. We don't want to date anybody else. And we want to express our love to each other in the fullest way that we can. So she moved in with me, or I moved in with her, or we started having a sexual relationship at some point. We lit the fuse. The stuff's burning. It's in process. Check it out. You don't have to spend 30 minutes doing research to figure out that secular people who don't have anything to say in the stake of spirituality will tell you that live-in sexual relationships have a far lower chance of succeeding as significant marriages than people who initiate marriage in the beginning step of the relationship. It's weird. You can look at all different ways of slicing this thing. But when you look at the evidence does not say that testing compatibility and trying to find spiritual, emotional, and physical intimacy strengthens relationships. It does not do that. And we don't even have to ask any doctors or PhDs or people who've written papers or done studies on it. I could ask you, when you were in a relationship with somebody and you crossed over sexual lines, did that in fact over the long term make the relationship better or weaker? Oh, well, thank you. There you have it. Did it, in the end of the day, rhetorical question, in the end of the day, did it truly cause you to be strengthened in your commitment to one another, or did it fragment you by elevating the sense of mistrust? Well, if it's going to cross over those lines with me, maybe they're going to cross over those lines with somebody else. Did jealousy rise up? Did anger rise up? Was there in some cases a sense that maybe you let yourself down or they let you down, and that sort of started residing somewhere deep underneath, and arguments rose up and conflict rose more and more, and eventually the relationship fragmented, and when it fragmented, you're walking away with some permanent stuff that you can't undo. That's not to make you feel bad. That just simply means when you move into other relationships, you can't just say, oh, by the way, you're carrying with you a process that started. And man, the Lord knows once the process starts, it is so difficult to reverse it. That's why the first time you cross a line in a relationship, it's almost like the end of the relationship. I've sat with so many young couples, college-age couples especially, and they said, well, we've slept together, or we did this, or we did the other. What should we do? How can we restore? And you know what? I'm not a fatalist in any way, but I just say, you need to just break up. I mean, if you were to come to me tonight and say, we love each other, we love God, we've been coming to 722, but we've been sleeping together for the last 9 months, but we don't want to do that anymore, what should we do? Here's what I would tell you. Save you the email, break up. Because anything else is not going to work unless you want full-time, 24-hour-a-day chaperones on all your dates and you only meet in public places. That would work. That's the only other option you got. If you want to try that option will work. But what I've found out is most people can figure out how to get around all that stuff. And once you light the flame, it is like trying to stop a train coming downhill on slick tracks and send it back up to the top of the mountain. I mean, once you've gone to step one, it's almost impossible to go back to step zero. When you go from step 1 to step 2, it's almost impossible to say, oh, we shouldn't have done that. We're going to take our relationship back to step 1/2. I doubt it. Unless you break up. Break up, separate, go separate ways for a while. Trust God if He wants to put you back together, He will. But I mean, staying together in the patterns and the relationship after you, that's why I'm saying God's given you a gift called sexual innocence. You got to carry it really, really well and defend it like crazy. And you have to be smart. To be wise about where you put yourself. The culture is saying, hey, we think this is going to bring us closer together. After 10 years, normal marriages, 83% of them are still together. After 10 years, couples who've lived together before they got married, only 71% are still together. 12% less after 10 years are together from people who've lived together. So if you want to have a less chance of your marriage lasting 10 years, live with your partner before you get married. After 20 years, 68% of people who married as their initial step of living together are still together. Only 51% of people who live together first are still together after 20 years. 17% difference between one group and the other. If you want a 17% less chance after 20 years of being married, live with your partner before you get married. Buy the lie that living together and experience sexuality beforehand will lead you to marriage. I mean, marriage is a tough thing already, people. This Neil Clark Warren dude, the eHarmony guy, you know this guy? Anybody know him? Anybody paying this guy any money? Anybody here paying the eHarmony guy? Anybody on eHarmony? Not one person here. Man, they're just not doing good in Atlanta. I'll have to call them and let them know that. Man, that thing stinks in Atlanta. Nobody's participating. He says that this guy, remember we talked about him 2 weeks ago? You got to go on 100 dates. Most people, average person goes on 100 dates before they get married. Now, I'm thinking somebody's busting the curve here because I didn't go on, like 8, So, I mean, who's going on like 400 dates and like pulling up the curve for all the rest of us? I mean, that person's crazy. Are you that person, any of you in here? I mean, that's craziness. So that's 100 dates on average before you get married. So, hello, it takes 400 dates to get 4 of you married. But at the end of the day, only 1 in 4 marriages, according to eHarmony Man, is a happy and harmonious marriage at the end of the day. So you got to have 400 dates to get 4 of you married, and only 1 of the 4 of you is going to be happily married. So the odds are already stacked against us, so let's don't complicate the equation by saying, I know what will happen. If we can have a sexual relationship, that'll make us stronger. We'll discover our compatibility. It'll strengthen our relationship. Man, our odds are already difficult. So you can't buy into that way of thinking. You can't buy into that lie. After 5 of 7 years, I'll just give you one other of these statistics. It's pretty interesting. 5 to 7 years after you move in with your boyfriend or girlfriend, so you decide you're going to live together, you're going to move in, you're going to share space together. 5 years later down the road, only 1 in 5 of those couples are still living together. That's a low success rate for the trial period. You're saying, but Louie, look, that's fantastic. That means, all those other people discovered that they were with the wrong person, and had they married that person and discovered they were with the wrong person, that would have been terrible. Oh, yeah, that's making good sense. And the candle is burning for 5 years. But they found out they were with the wrong person. So when they found the right person, they could say, hey, I'm so glad I found you. I've only got half a candle. And I got a lot of baggage. I got a lifetime of memories of this other guy. But I'm so glad I found you. Why didn't you just find them anyway? Why not let the relationship work itself out without moving in together and without having a sexual joint union? And then discover where God wants to lead you, so that if the relationship doesn't work, which it may not, because you have 100 dates on average before you get married, you don't have 100 guys that you're carrying around with you at the end of the day. You just have 100 memories of guys you went out with that didn't work out. You see, you can get out of the relationship, but getting the guy out of you is really, really hard. The Scripture puts it this way. This is the proverb writer. Listen to what he said in Proverbs 14, beginning in verse 12. He said, there is a way that seems right to a man, but the end of that way is the way of death. Listen to what he says. He goes and says, even in times of joy, the heart can be sad. And at the end of a good time is often grief. How applicable is that? We're talking about a guy who was writing eons ago history. He says there's a way that seems right to a man, but the end of that way is the way of death. Even in joy, the heart can be sad, and the end of a good time is often a bad time, and we know that. And we understand we're all having this conversation because we're sexual people. We like sex. Sex is a good thing, by the way. And when you have sex, no matter who you have it with, it's generally enjoyable. Can we say that out loud here? I mean, I don't know if that's even allowed or not. I just know that if we deny that point, we're going to make ourselves irrelevant, because the reason a lot of people keep doing the same thing is because there is a momentary wow factor. where the body is clicking on all cylinders going, yeah, good. And even in joy, the heart can be sad though. And at the end of a good time, it's amazing how fast grief can come. And we can go, whoa, whoo, feels God, yeah, whoo. And it just comes over us just in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. And all of a sudden you're seeing again, you're like, oh, what am I doing? And the candle's burning. And I can't go back. I can never go back. So what does God have to say? A couple things.